Okay, stats, starting chapter 9. If you do not have these notes, I have them either sitting at the school in the Commons. I've got a couple copies with me here at my house if you want me to bring them to you. Otherwise, I also am going to post them on Google Classrooms for you to print yourself if you would like to do it that way. But you'll probably need a physical copy somehow, some way, so try to get a hold of that. But section 9.1, I'm going to split this up into a couple different videos. But chapter 9 is testing two proportions, okay? So basically it's exactly the same thing as what we did in the last chapter, but now we're testing two proportions against each other, okay? So like in chapter 8, what we would do is like for our null hypothesis and our alternative hypothesis. Okay, so H0, H1, we would say maybe the proportion of girls in the United States is 0.52. Okay, and then our alternative hypothesis would be the proportion is not equal to 0.52. Okay, and that's kind of what it would look like in chapter 8. Chapter 9 now is going to look a little bit different, but basically what they're going to do for our null and alternative hypothesis is they're going to say, okay, we tested two different sets of, or two different samples, and in the first sample, we got the proportion of girls was 0.53, and the proportion of girls in the second sample we got was 0.48. Okay, are those two close enough to say that there's the same proportion of girls for both samples? So now we're comparing two samples, comparing two samples against each other. Okay, so instead of our null hypothesis being that we're comparing to a certain number, we're actually comparing and saying that P1 is equivalent to P2, and that P1 is not equal to P2. Okay, if we have two different samples, it's not likely that they're going to have exactly the same proportion of girls, but basically we're saying, is 0.48 close enough to 0.53 to say that those two have the same amount of girls in each sample? Okay, so this is kind of what our stuff is going to look like this chapter, where we're comparing two proportions instead. All right, so the first part of this section, I'm not going to go through the notes. I'm not going to go through example 1, but I do want to kind of talk about these boxes here. And the homework for this first part, there are two homework assignments for section 9.1. Okay, the first one is it says chapter 9 formulas for two sample hypotheses, and basically this sheet is what I'm going to go through with you, or some of them. The remaining problems are going to be what you're going to do for homework, but it's just getting you used to plugging like all of these values in and figuring out what z is and typing it into your calculator correctly. Because there's ways of using parentheses, there's ways of putting it in wrong and getting the wrong answer. So this is just practice, trying to get you used to doing that stuff correct. And these are like your test statistics. So when you're solving for z, when you're solving for t down here at the bottom, these are like computing your test statistics, but the formulas are really nasty. So they want to make sure that you know how to type those in right. Okay, so we're going to start up here. When we're talking about proportions, we would have like a p hat and a q hat. Okay, but now we have p hat 1 and q hat 1. Okay, sometimes they will give this to you, like p hat 1 would be like 0.53 and p hat 2 would be 0.48. But if they don't give that to you, they might say like 40 girls out of 152, right? Or whatever. So that's how you would calculate P1, P hat 1, is you'd take 40 and divide by 152. So these are just kind of some of the formulas. Q hat 1 would then just be 1 minus that. Okay, so if it came out as 0.53, your Q hat would be 0.47. Okay. P1 is the population proportion, so that's what we're actually going to use in here. So the P1 is going to go with your claim, and then these are our values, our percent. that we get from our sample, okay? N1 is the size of the sample, X1 is the number of successes of first sample, so X would be 40 girls out of N, so this would be N1, this would be X1, that type of thing, okay? So just typing those in here to find your test statistic. This is my test statistic is labeled as Z. So you would have P hat 1 minus P hat 2, and then minus P1 minus P2. Okay, before what we had for Z was we had like P hat minus P over the square root of PQ over N. Okay, very similar looking formula, but now they're incorporating both of them into the equation. Okay, so P hat 1, P1, and then they have something called P bar. Okay, that's what this guy is. This is P bar. Okay, and P bar is the average of the P's. So if you think about taking the average, you're adding them together. So I'm adding the X's together, I'm adding the N's together, and I'm dividing those out. So let's say in the first sample I got 50 girls, in the second sample I got 54 girls. I would add those together and then add in my total number. So maybe this was 120, you know, and 157. I would add those two together and I would divide, and that would give me my pooled sample, which would incorporate both of them together. Okay, so just some of these formulas that they have going on here. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to do a couple of these problems with you over here just so we can see how we type this into our calculator correctly. So this first one is that P bar, that one that I was just talking about, where you're adding the X's together and you're adding the N's together and you're dividing. Okay, so if you write this whole thing out, I'm adding the X's together, 38, 50, and I'm dividing by adding the N's together, 80 and 69. Okay, so then if you want to type that all in one shot, you sure can, but you would have to use parentheses, so I'd have to do parentheses 38 plus 50 divided by parentheses 80 plus 69. And that's how I'd have to do it that way. Otherwise, you can do the top, figure out what the top is, figure out what the bottom is, and then you can divide. So P bar will be 0. And let's do 2 decimal places, 0.59. So all of these, go ahead and do 2 decimal places on, okay? All right, so same thing down here. They want you to find Q bar, okay? Q bar, if you're given P bar, so this is what you're given. This is how you find it. They want you to evaluate what Q bar would be. So it's just the opposite of what that guy will be. This one, go ahead and list out however many decimals are here as well. So you'll have to figure out what Q bar is. I'm going to do example 3 with you, so we'll plop all this stuff in here. Z, they want us to find, let's see, Z equals, I'm just going to write all this stuff in here, okay, minus, okay, so P hat 1 is 0.9, so I'm going to do 0.9, okay, P hat 2 is 0.6, okay, minus P1 is, okay, this is another weird thing, P1 minus P2, if we are claiming, if our claim is that P1 is equal to P2, okay, think about what this would look like if I take and I want to move the P2 to this side. I would subtract P2 minus P2. So I would have P1 minus P2, and that would be equal to, over here, would be 0, okay? So when they say this right here, P1 minus P2 equals 0, that is just consistent with our claim, okay? So I have P1 minus P2 here, and that's, I'm going to fill in 0 for that, if that makes any sense at all. So if we're claiming that they're equal, then that means if I would subtract them, it would be 0, and I'm going to put 0 in that spot, okay? Let's keep going. So square root, I have P bar 1, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have enough room to write this in. P bar 2, or Q bar 1 over N1 is 92 plus this, that, over 32 is my second sample, okay? So lots of stuff that I'm plugging in. This P bar 1 is that point, oh my, this goes here, this goes here. This goes here, this goes here. I've kind of made a mess of my paper now, but if you can see that, then I don't have to rewrite that, okay? So now we're going to plug stuff in, and I would really encourage you to do some of this in pieces if you can. Okay, so I'm going to do the top part. 0.9 minus 0.6 minus 0 basically is just going to be 0.3. That's all I have on the top, but then on the bottom I have the square root of, I'm going to do this chunk here plus this chunk here. Okay, so when I do that first chunk, okay, I'm taking this 0.763079 times the 0.374427, and I'm dividing that by 92. I don't necessarily have to do parentheses in that case because it's going to do the order of operations. Multiply, then divide. That's what I get for the first one. Okay, so 0.0031, let's go 0.6. We'll go 6 decimal places because that's what they did up here. Okay, plus, if I type that in, I'm going to go back up into my equation. The only thing I have to change is change this 92 to 32. Okay, and then I've got 0.00892 9 is what the second number is. Okay, now that I have them consolidated down a little bit, now I can just type that in. So I have 0.3 divided by the square root of 0.003106 plus 0.008929. That's what he will look like. Okay, so that z will be 2.73 as my final answer. That's what z will be, okay? Which seems like an appropriate value for z. Usually we get numbers between like -3 and +3. Every once in a while we'll get like a 5 or something that's kind of weird. So, so go ahead and do those. I'm going to have you skip, let's see, I'll let you skip a couple of them because these two are kind of the same as each other. So let's have you skip number 4. Do number 5, do number 6, and then you'll have to go back and finish number 2. So do 2, 5, 6, okay? And then on the back side, let's do one of these together. So let's do, you can do 7, you can do 8. Number 9 we'll do together real quick. So the error is z, 2.12. Square root of standard deviation 1 is 0.98. I'm going to square that thing because that's what it says, standard deviation 1 squared, over n1 is 18, plus standard deviation 2 squared is 0.65 squared, over n2 is 60. Okay, that's not a terrible equation like the first one was. Not terrible. Okay, so let's see how I want to do this. I'm going to do the middle part first. So I'm going to do 0.98 squared divided by 18 plus, I'll do 0.65 squared divided by 60. Okay, if I do all of that at one shot, this middle part here is 0.060397. Okay. All right, then what I can do is I can take the square root of that answer. Okay, so I'm kind of working from the inside out. Square root of the answer, and then multiply that by 2.12. Okay, and my error is going to be 0.52. We'll do 2 decimal places for that. Okay, so not terrible. Sorry, not terrible, but some of these variables can kind of look intimidating. Okay, so go ahead and do those. This one's not too bad, and then these two are fairly short and sweet. So you've got a couple problems for homework, maybe like 7, 8 or so. But just go ahead and plop those numbers in and see what you get. They're just having you practice using the formulas because eventually we're going to have to do some calculations and stuff with this. Okay? All right, good luck.